G'day and welcome. Thank you for joining me again. So, following on from the last video, which is somewhere up there. There we go. We're going to change the valve block that we rebuilt yesterday. And this is what we're up to here. So I'm going to take you through what tools you'll need and basically what we're going to do to extricate that valve block from the car. Let's get started. Oh, if you haven't already, check this out. So Facebook, right? I've got a little Facebook page called Chilling with Keithy. You can come and chat with me there. Talk about all things four-wheel drive. Doesn't have to be a Range Rover. Obviously, I've got mates with Nissans, Toyotas, everything. So come over and have a yarn. If you've got a problem, a query, anything like that, you can chat with me there. And I also put a few things up in between these videos that you can see what I'm up to. So feel free to check that out if you want. Chilling with Keithy. I'll see you there. Let's get into this. Okay, so pretty basic tools just to get this this valve block out of the car. First thing you'll need this small little, you can use a long one as well, but a small little Phillips head. You can get a flat head in. Now the Phillips head is for the cruise control module, which is there and there. The flat head here, that's to help you get these air lines out of their little collets there. Don't forget also to get your little dryer there, your exhaust silencer, sorry. You need to unscrew that. So those are the two tools there, and then this here is a 13mm on a ratchet. Get in there and you can undo those bolts down there. So that's what we're going to do first, is we're going to get in and we're going to take these little Phillips heads off here. Removes the cruise control. We'll take these four, there's two here, and then there's two up the back there, two up the back. And then once you've removed these air lines, you can literally lift this whole box out, and then you can take it in and work on in the garage at your workbench or something like that. Another thing worth mentioning as well, if I can move these tools out of the road just a little bit. So I have this manual bypass here, so this will look different to a standard P38. Normally these air lines here will just go straight into the valve block there instead of coming around and doing all kinds of magic around here. So if you haven't got diagnostics and you don't have the bypass like I do here, you're going to find that there'll be air pressure in a lot of these lines here, and you don't want that when you're going to remove them. So what you can do is do what I've done. Drop your car down to access, and then you can raise your car and lower it a few times just to remove the pressure from the tank. So by trying to raise and lower a few times before you start this job, it'll just deplete the air in the tank in the system. And then being down at access is your lowest height. You're going to have the lowest air pressure or resistance when you try and remove those there. And your tank will look like that. It'll be pretty low in pressure. That's almost dead empty there. It's got about 10 pounds in it. What I can do is I can isolate that. I could leave the car up and just deflate all of this system here independently. But I'm not going to do that. So that's what you can do. If you don't have all of this flashy system here that I've got, just lift your car up a few times, drop it down, lift it up, just to go between access and low height a few times, and then leave it at access height, turn the car off, and you'll have the lowest air pressure in that system possible, which will make it easier for getting all of these lines out of here. And we'll remove the air lines. They're all out. Next step is to remove the 4 bolts that hold the entire box in, and then I'll remove the inlet for the air compressor, because that, as you can see, I've got that plugged into the airbox. And you move your cruise control out of the way so that you can see what you're doing. Lifting your cruise control module up also helps getting these bolts in and out. Right, so that's all of the bolts out. Now I just need to remove my air feed from my little air compressor there. I'll just put this up here for now. That's done, and this whole box just lifts out. It's reasonably heavy. Oh, that's right, I forgot. There's a loom there too. We need to disconnect the loom. We'll get this loom off and get back to you. Alrighty, so I've got this loom out of here now. I just had to get a screwdriver under here and pry this particular one up. So just triple check, all the air lines are disconnected. We've got the cruise control unit off. I've got the air feed for my compressor off. You won't have to do that. All 4 of our nuts and bolts are undone, so it should just lift up theoretically and out, just like that. And then you can remove the valve block from the actual box itself. Okay, so you have your valve block out, up on your workbench, very good. What you'll need to do now, remove your exhaust silencer, very easy, you should be able to just twist that by hand. Then you're going to undo the 3 bolts that hold the valve block to this box. They're 8mm. And then you've got your 3 screws that hold the air compressor in as well, and they're also 8mm. So we'll remove that, remove these, then we'll pull the air compressor out and remove the attachment on the air compressor as well. There you have nuts and bolts that hold the valve block into the box, and the air compressor should just slide off just like that, nice and easily. Next thing we need to do is just remove that little collet there so that we can pull the compressor completely out. One air compressor. And it also pays to use a pair of pliers to push that in so that you can just remove the electrics for the compressor as well, which I will do right now. Just like that. Air compressor out. So the next step is to gently lift up the valve block from the box, basically. If you drop your nuts in there like I did when you're removing your compressor, you can get them out once you've removed the valve block from the box. There are some electric connections on here that have these little fittings just like the air compressor to keep it to the box. It's also good to keep in mind that they'll be there, so when you lift it out you're not ripping these to bits. I've already taken this one out when I removed it from the car. So we'll just lift him out now. Should be relatively pain-free. I do say relatively. Sometimes it also helps to remove these little clips from here. So you can use a screwdriver for that. Where's my screwdriver? Steel ruler might also do. Just to prise that up and lift him out. Same with this one here. Just eliminates an obstruction when you're trying to lift that out. Just like that, out she comes. So I'll move the box out of the way. So what we have here is all of the electrics, which are already on the other valve block, ready to go. This here is a driver unit. So this basically is what gets the signal from the ECU to say open or close all of these different valves to do their job or start the compressor. What happens with these things is over time, I mean, these P38s are quite old now. You've got to think the youngest P38 is 18 years old. These driver units, they're amongst so much heat. I mean, they're right next to the air compressor. They're in the engine bay. When the engine's running, it's very hot in there. I'm sure you're well aware of that. So these things can get very, very hot. If you're experiencing some really weird symptoms with your suspension, like it might only be lifting one side, or it might go down on the right rear and there's no leaks or anything like that, a lot of the time it's these things here. Now, I've worked on a lot of P38 Range Rovers, not mine specifically. I've worked on heaps. Even my mechanic calls me up to work on P38 Range Rovers. And 9 times out of 10, I found that this driver unit here is the cause of a million faults with the suspension. Sometimes it even throws up random faults with height sensors and things like that. This here can be such a problem. I do recommend, if you haven't changed yours and it's about 10 years old at least, get a new one and have it as a spare, or put it in when you do your valve block, because that will eliminate so many problems. This is the biggest problem you'll have with your air suspension, given the age of these vehicles now. So this is brand new. I purchased this one not long ago and fitted it up. I'm going to reuse this on the new valve block, so I'm going to have to remove this and place it on this valve block before I put it into the car. Okay, so we've got the driver unit, the little airline and the brace mounts off the old valve block, and I'm ready to put them onto the rebuilt valve block. If you've just rebuilt the one that you pulled out of your car, this won't be too much of a chore. But what you will know is that the pressure switch for the valve block is actually attached to this little loom plug here, and that can be a pain in the ass to get out. So if your pressure switch is okay and you're just swapping valve blocks, you can just reuse this. If not, you can see here on the rebuilt one, the previous owners actually put a plug on that to bypass this, and it would have bypassed into the engine bay. Now I've changed that back so that it plugs in like it normally should. These little pins can be really hard to get out of here. You need a very fine screwdriver, and you've got to go in and push the tab down on the right particular ones in order to get that out. So if you're going to do it that way, then yeah, I'll leave you with that on your own. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to reuse the old pressure switch because I know it's good. Okay, so as you can see, I've got the driver unit back on, I've got the plug in, I've got the pressure switch in, the airline, and I've got the little mount for the compressor, and also the little foot that goes on the bottom. So this is essentially the bottom. It's going to go upside down in the box. One thing to remember when you're putting your driver unit on is these little things go behind the driver unit. So this little mount here and this little foot here, they sit behind the driver unit as it bolts on. And also with the electric plug up the top here, it has to go underneath the driver unit before you bolt it down, just this little one here. Otherwise it won't quite reach the other plug up the top from the valve block itself. So I've given it a wipe down, just a general quick wipe down with my rag and a bit of WD-40. Everything's in there and looking good. I've cleaned up these little collets here, a little bit of WD-40 and wipe them down. I just clean everything when I go, especially with WD-40, because it's really good at not only lubricating but cleaning, and it stops bits of debris and stuff from being on there when you do it all back up. Next step for me, I'm going to take the box for the valve block. I'm going to take it out, give it a clean up. I like putting things in lovely and clean once they're done. So I'll go and clean that box out, and then I will remount this and we can go and put it back in the car. Okay, so while these guys are drying, I've given that a good clean up. You can see I missed a little bit there and a little bit of that, but that's okay. Once they're dry, I'm going to give them a quick wipe over with the CRC here, and that will just restore a little bit of the former glamour that it used to have. While they're drying off, I'm going to come out here and I'm going to clean up every single joint here that you can see, every airline, the end of each one, so you can see my little elbows, they go back to the springs. I'm going to pull each one of them out, give them a quick clean up with a bit of CRC and a wipe over with my rag, and then that will ensure that they're nice and clean for when they go back into these lovely new O-rings. If any of the ends of any of these have got little burrs on them, or they're, you know, they feel a little bit sharp, you can get a pencil sharpener onto them, and you can actually just sort of put a little taper in it. You can see I've done that with the one down here. Just remove sharp edges, and that can prolong the life of your O-rings if they're a little bit sharp. So I'll do that. I'll do that to all of my valves down here as well. I'll just clean up all of the little air connection points while that's drying off. Okay, so I've cleaned up all of the stuff in the engine bay with a bit of WD-40, just give them a little bit of a wipe down. This is dried, and I've given it a bit of a coat with WD-40 and a wipe down. That looks a lot better than it did before. Just a little bit of a rejuvenation type thing. The next step now is to actually put the valve block back into this box. So I'll make a little bit of room up here. We'll turn him sideways. So you can see this is where the air lines go in. I like to keep that facing out. This is the bottom here, so I'll need to flip this upside down from what it is and across this way. And if it's going to play the game, it should just go straight in and sit down quite nicely for you. Sometimes they don't like to play the game, and you have to just give them a bit of a coax. Looks like it's going in reasonably easy there now, and that's in. Okay, that's good. Beautiful. Beautiful. Okay, so you've got mounting points 1, 2, and 3 there. First step is to bolt them in, and then you can reinstall your air compressor. You've got your electrics here, and then you can put those little clips that you've taken off at the back. I'll give this another wipe down. Looks a little bit dusty from sitting on my workbench here. And then I'll reinstall the air compressor, and we'll get going with putting it back into the car. Okay, so everything's in and bolted down. I'll leave this out until I've plugged the loom back in later on once I've got it into the car. So I've got my 3 bolts, I've got my little exhaust filter, we've got the 2 little clips that I pulled out of here. The air compressor is in and the airline is on the air compressor. That's something to always check, and I've cleaned all of the fittings and everything like that in there. Just giving it a light wipe down, and it's ready to go back in the car now. So let's go and do it. Okay, so here's the valve block, ready to go back in. Very happy. I'm just going to make sure that I'm not going to be obstructed by anything before I put it in. Now, this cruise control module is probably the most likely thing you'll encounter that will cause you grief. You can lift it up, tuck it around, do what you can do. I might even do this real quick. I'll just tuck him in there like that. Use that screwdriver to prop him up. And we'll sit him in here nicely, making sure that we don't crush any of the air lines or anything like that. Okay, so that's lined up with its hole beautifully. Okay, we're lined up at the back. I've got an airline down here that's decided to move about, but that's okay. It all looks pretty good. Excellent. Next step is to bolt it back down. So I've got my 4 bolts up here. Sometimes they can be a bit of a pain to get in, the ones at the very back here. Usually that makes it a bit of a problem, and I've got all of this LPG stuff here, which makes life very difficult for me. But thankfully I've got this cruise control module up and out of the way, so hopefully it's not too hard for me to get it back in. So that's bolted down nicely. The next thing that I'll do while I've got this lifted up, I'll push all of these air lines into their respective places, taking note of where they were when they came out, obviously. Okay, that looks good. Next up, I'll bolt this cruise control unit back down, and then we'll plug our electrics back in. Okay, so the cruise control module is bolted down. We have our electrics remaining, so we're all plugged in here. It's just the electrics now to finish off, and then we'll fire up and see how it goes. That looks great. It's all tucked in nicely. Amazing. And it's nice and clean, ready to go. I've also cleaned up the little lid here with a bit of WD-40. What I'll do now, I'll quickly just move my tools off here and we'll start it up. We'll keep an eye on the pressure gauge just here and see how that goes. We'll raise it up and see what happens. All right, we'll go and start the car up now. Keep your eye on the pressure gauge here. You'll see the compressor moving as it pumps everything up. So what we're going to do is we're going to fill the tank up, and then we're going to start raising the car up and making sure that the heights all work once that's full. We're already at an 80 PSI, 80 PSI. Now we're at 100 PSI. We're at 125 PSI. Okay, that's 150 PSI. So 150 PSI in the tank. That took only about 5 minutes to inflate. You can tell by the compressor stop that we're up there, as well as the gauge. What we'll do now is we will go and select our first height, access height, because the car is on the bump stops at the moment, and we'll see what it does to the tank as well. Very interesting. So in between each of the heights, I'm going to allow the tank to pump up before I select the next height. Just selected access height. It says that it's already there. You can hear it clicking in here. See how much air that it's taken from the tank while it does its thing. So it took that from 150 down to about 90 PSI in order to get the car just off the bump stops and to access height properly. So we'll let that pump back up, and then we'll go up and choose the next height, which is low. So you can see that that's my access height there. There's only about an inch between the guard. Still quite low. I could go lower on that if I wanted to. We'll let that tank pump up and we'll go to low. Okay, so you can see again that the tank is back up to 150 PSI. Compressor has stopped running. Let's go and put it into low height. down from about 150 to about 110 psi. You can see it's adjusting there. That's why there's a flicker in the pressure. It's adjusting as it's pumping up. The compressor will stop when the car needs to lower, because obviously you don't want to put air in. You want to take it out when you're lowering. So there's the compressor going again. As it adjusts its height. So that is at low height there now. We'll wait for the air compressor to pump the tank up again, and we'll go to standard height. Okay, so the tank's back at 150 psi. Just making some little adjustments there now. We'll go and put it in the standard height. Can't quite reach it with the other hand. Okay, so we're going up, hopefully, presumably. Yes, we are. So that looks to be at or close to standard height now. And you can see there that it's taken that down to about 110 psi again. See the compressor's stopped, you can hear the valves adjusting to level the car. Compressor will start again in a second, there it goes. So it'll continue to adjust. So 40 psi it took out of the tank in order to get it up to standard height. It may not look very high right now, but if I was to put a standard P38 beside that, you would see the difference. It's quite high. I've got this power lead running in there because I have my fridge in the back running off 240 volts at the moment. So that's in standard height. There you go. So I'm pretty happy with that, how it's turned out so far. It's doing everything that it should. It's raised up to the standard height as I've asked it to do. I just let the tank pump up in between just for the purpose of this video. I could have just gone straight to standard height if I wanted after access, but anyway, so what I'm going to do now, I'll let that tank pump up and I'll get it full, and then I'm just going to leave a door ajar and we'll give it a couple of hours, and I'll come back and I'll see if that tank has leaked out in the air or if the car's dropped down. We'll see if it's a success or not. Alright, so it's been about 5 hours now, and as you'll see here, the tank is still up there with its pressure, which is really good. It means that that has worked. I'll just close this driver's door. And the car is still at height, so that's good as well. That sounds to me like a bit of a win there. So today's work is a success, same with yesterday's work. We've got a working valve block, no leaks, everything's looking pretty good. What I'll do though, I'll go through here and I'll just spray around my little spray bottle with soapy water just in case there are any leaks in any of those connections anyway, just to double check. But I'm very happy with that so far.